Good morning. This is SO Chris 199, and I'm trying out a new method with these story videos. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, today I want to discuss with you before I get on to the next security job. I want to tell you a little story about when I went to EMT school, and this is a trade school. And the one I went to, I seriously don't understand how it was state accredited with the EMTs, whatever it is it's called. I really don't even remember. NR EMT or something like that. I don't remember. But anyways, they were somehow accredited, even though after I did my finals and did all the stations, the 7 stations, I did the test. I got a 94% on it. Even with when I went over the trauma and medical assessments, I passed everything and even did my 36 hours attempting to go to a firehouse that was seriously like 100 miles away from where I lived, which didn't make any sense because the school was in Arizona. And let me just get into it because there's a lot to unpack here. So basically, I was having kind of like a midlife crisis when I was working for Bolt Security. And so in the time of me going to the children's hospital, what ended up happening is before I went there, when I was working for Bolt, I kept thinking to myself, you know what? I really just need to go and get an actual trade degree, because I kept telling myself, well, it still kind of counts if you do unarmed security because it's still technically a trade, which I guess it is. So anyways, so what happened is that I ended up signing up because I pulled up a list on Google of all the different trade schools you can go to in Arizona that wasn't too far from where I lived. And the only one on there that I was semi-interested in would be going to become an EMT-B. Keep in mind, I was months into the program without realizing that you actually cannot become a paramedic going to regular EMT school. I didn't know that because no one explained it to me until later on. So you're kind of getting the feel for what I'm talking about here. So I ended up signing up. So I was supposed to go to a different school that was pretty much, I think, the university, or not the university, but basically the equivalent of the community college. But it was a 4-month thing where you had to pass like a writing test and things like that. I still had to do it for this school, but this one was actually a lot easier and a lot cheaper to get into. So what ends up happening is that I choose to go to the school to save a couple $100, which ended up being a huge mistake. And it's one of those buyer remorse situations because you get what you pay for. And what I paid for, even though it was the cheapest option, it was the shittiest option. And I actually never ended up getting my certificate stating that I am an EMT from the school. So let me explain. So anyways, I figured, well, I'm working nights, like graveyard shift, so I can pretty much just bring my laptop and do my homework while I'm there. From what I talked about in a previous video, I ended up getting into a verbal confrontation with the vice president of Bolt, and then I ended up quitting the job. So when I went to the children's hospital, thankfully, they sent me over to the one, and I already talked about that was under construction. So, that was one of my recent videos before I made the tribute video. So I went to EMT school, and I was in between 2 jobs when I first started. So basically nothing was explained to me or the class. So the whole class of the whole EMT school, it was a fucking mess. The minute I was trying to do anything there, and I ended up paying the school off in 3 payments, I basically just drained, I would say probably 40 or 50% of my paycheck to just make sure that I could pay it off as quickly as possible because I didn't want to get into debt. So I didn't want them to come after me or, whatever the situation, like, oh, I'll promise to pay you, and then I never do it. So I ended up actually paying off the entire school by the time it was time for me to start. So in the school of me being in an EMT school, which actually took a lot of the students only 10 days to do, it took me 7 months. And I still never ended up getting a certificate or them stating anything that has to do with anything with the EMT school. So I got completely screwed over. So keep in mind, I could have just sat there on Yelp and just looked at all the star reviews, and I found a woman on there who actually was in the exact same situation that I was in, where she was in the school for 4 months, and then when she passed everything, for whatever the reason, they refused to sign her off and give her a certificate saying that she passed. So I considered suing the school. What ended up happening is I found a loophole when doing my taxes, and that's why I didn't pursue legal action with them. So, yeah. Anyways, so I ended up going to the school, and this is on Tuesdays and Thursdays because I have to take the traditional class of doing, I think it was like 6 p.m. to 9 or 10 p.m., like something like that, 2 days a week. And then after doing the training for, what they wanted to do is they wanted me to go do 36 hours of internship at a firehouse that was in the middle of fucking nowhere. And I had to drive an hour plus to get there and an hour plus back. And keep in mind, this is not paid. They did not pay me to do this. So I ended up driving 2.5 to maybe 3 hours every time I had to go to their firehouse, because literally every other firehouse, which actually makes a lot of sense now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the other firehouses there was one literally up the street from where I lived at. And they said every single one that was in my proximity, and I was in the downtown area, they said, nope, we don't work with any of them. And they gave us a list of like 5 firehouses, and every single one, it's 2 of them were on the fucking Indian reservation. One of them was the one I got sent to, which actually ended up being a month and a half later after I had already passed my test, quote unquote, from what they said. This whole, just even going over this is starting to piss me off because I put in so much fucking work and effort and money into this, and I completely got fucked over. But anyways, this was a year ago, about a year and a half at this point. So anyways, I end up starting 2 months late. I don't remember what the reason was. I don't remember. I think it was just because I felt that I wasn't ready to start. So I took the next traditional class, which started, I believe, in March. So no, it was in February. I started in February. So, and this went all the way up till fucking September for an EMT certification class. That's basically what I'm trying to tell you is this. I seriously don't understand how the school is accredited. I seriously don't get it. Looking back on this and how fucking just terrible the school was. So anyways, I go in and it's already a mess with the students. The first day I'm there, I was already pissed off coming out of work because I had almost got into it with one of my coworkers I remember he was this old man, and I had to explain the entire job to him because the supervisor didn't want to, refuse to do it, or basically at this job when I was at the children's hospital, I already went over this, but they would throw the responsibility on you instead of the supervisor just taking care of the situation because they were fucking lazy and they were really shitty at their job. So particular woman I worked with was fucking awful. So anyways, so when I go in for my first day, it is a mess. They don't know what they're doing. They didn't even know I was supposed to be there. It's one of those kind of things. I had to keep explaining myself. I had to keep showing them the receipts that I had already paid for the class. It was already ready to go. They didn't tell me what books I was supposed to buy. They didn't say basically nothing was explained. And I found out that there was only one receptionist for 2 or 3 schools in the entirety of the state. There was only one receptionist. And the woman, I hardly could understand what she was saying because of all the broken English. So, it was a fucking mess. So, I don't know. Anyways, so I ended up getting transferred because they were about to kick me out of the school 3 months in. Because what had happened is that when I was doing the school, no one explained to me or the class that we weren't supposed to be going through all of our questions and answers and quizzes and tests through their actual website. We were supposed to use a thing called Pearson. No one at any point explained it to the class. It wasn't in an email. It wasn't in a text, like nothing. And this seriously went on for a month and a half, because when it was time for us to be in the class to take quiz 1, which was like, I think it was like you had an hour to do like 50 questions. There was 4 or 5 quizzes. Then they had finals. So what happened was that when I went up to quiz 1, they said you didn't have any. They said, "Oh, Chris, you don't have any credits." And I told the woman, who actually ended up getting fired. I told the woman, the receptionist, I showed her on my laptop. I've done all these assignments. I did them at home. It took me like 2-3 hours to get to quiz 1, but it wasn't showing me that I had opened it up. Like it kept saying, well, no credits or something like that. And you needed like it was like 15, 20 credits or whatever the hell it said in order for you to take the quiz. So the woman said, "No, you're doing it through our program. That's just for you to take notes and to do extra work if you want to do a cram school kind of thing." But she said none of this is required. You were supposed to use the Pearson program. They didn't give me a username. They didn't nothing. Nothing was set up. You would think for me paying all this money that they would have just fucking got everything done for me and then everything would have just been in the email. Nothing was explained to anybody in this class. So I ended up being a month and a half behind everybody else. Well, there was actually a couple of people in the class that were just as behind as I was. So because, again, nothing was explained. So I told her, well, but it wasn't. And so me and her almost got in an argument in the class because I kept telling her over and over again, but it wasn't explained. You didn't send me an email. And she was saying, well, it was in your red book. I handed out all these red books to everyone and I went through it. And I was like, well, why would you not just set it up? So anyways, and it was one of those things where the woman made all the students feel like they were fucking idiots if you questioned anything the school did. Like she would literally snap on you for anything. Like it was super fucking unprofessional. So also let me get into the people that were teaching our class, because there was 2 guys in there who actually did an excellent job, but both of them fucking quit. Because they had told us, the whole class, they had mentioned to us that they had talked to the CEO of this university, quote unquote, this trade school bullshit, that 2 of these guys who were both fire paramedics had explained to them multiple times the stuff that we're being trained on is not even used on fire trucks and ambulances nowadays. Like it was all equipment from the fucking 80s or something, or the early 90s. I heard that a couple of times. A nurse came in and told us that, 2 fire medics, and I think another, an advanced EMT. No, it wasn't even him. It was another person. So anyways, we were being trained on equipment that wasn't even technically regulated by the NREMT or whatever, how this works with when you drive a fire truck or ambulance, the things that you use on people, if they're in for either trauma or medical calls. The shit we were using was really, really backdated. So we were getting the wrong training. And so also, and then that also kept coming up with the Pearson program, because eventually when the woman ended up fixing my shit, I think I was the one that actually, it's like my job now. The HR did not know what they were doing, and they expected you to fucking fix everything, even though it's their program. It's all their shit. So I ended up having to go through all these different steps to set up my own profile when they were supposed to do it. Anyways, so back to the quiz. So because I didn't have any credits, I had to go back and cram a month and a half's worth of work into a fucking week, which is, I actually did it. It seriously, like, dude, I seriously was studying and taking practice tests and doing everything on the program. I seriously was doing it 5 to 7 hours a day. And this is also including going to work for 8 hours, not including the school itself when I went on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I seriously got up to that point where I could retake the test the following, I think, Tuesday. And I had to come in an hour early and I still failed the fucking test because I was nervous. Like I felt like I couldn't focus because then I was falling behind from the rest of the class. And then it came up to, all that fucking, childhood trauma was like boiling up in the back of my head from all the times that like all my fucking teachers in like middle school and elementary school, like always being held back. And like, oh, well, I had to do like extra homework because I was always like getting fucking C's, D's, and F's. But it was just because the teachers didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And it was like shitty fucking public schools. Like, so anyways, so then a lot of that stuff, and it was like kind of like that childhood trauma was popping up. So anyways, I ended up failing the first test. And then when I took it coming in the following Thursday, I still failed the fucking quiz a second time. Because from what we were learning in the class, we were already on lesson like 20 something. And I was still stuck in lesson like fucking 12 or some shit. Like it was a fucking mess. So anyways, what ended up happening is that even though I finally on quiz 1, I finally passed it, but everybody was already on like quiz 3 and 4. So where most of the class was, a couple of them just actually ended up just quitting and dropping out. Every time I came to class, there was like a person missing. So anyways, I went all the way up until it was time for mid-finals, so midterms, but I had nowhere near close the credits that I needed to open it up. And I kept telling the receptionist, well, you guys never told me that I was supposed to use the Pearson program. And I told her on the phone, like we had a long conversation when I was at work and I had free time. This was 2.5 months, almost 3 months into the school. And I had told her on the phone with like almost yelling at her, you guys never, like nothing was ever explained to me as to how this is supposed to work. You guys kept saying you need to refer to the book. When I refer to the book, it doesn't make any sense. Like they just expected you to just know what to do kind of thing. So I told her, I just took quiz 3. And even though I failed the first 3 quizzes 2 times, I still ended up passing all of them. I just don't have enough credits to do the midterm because I was doing the wrong homework. And so she then makes this kind of shit up where she says, well, you know what we're going to do? I'm just going to tell the CEO you had a family emergency and you couldn't take the midterms. But what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pay another $150 to re-enter the school. And we're just going to put you in a new class and you're just going to start all over again. But we'll just pretend you weren't in the previous class. And I was just like, okay, dude. At that point, I was just like, you know what? I could have just asked to have a full refund and just take a legitimate school, like just pay the extra couple $100 and just go to the community college and just do their 4-month program. But no, like a fucking idiot, I ended up staying at the school even though they had proven that they didn't know what they were doing. So that was my fault. So anyways, what ends up happening after that is I had to wait a whole month. But in the meantime, while I was waiting, they never closed my Pearson program. So I ended up going all the way to midterms and then past the midterms, even though the thing wouldn't let me take it. Because she said, well, we have to reset everything. But they never did. So I ended up still studying about an hour to 2 hours a day, still doing the tests and the quizzes and doing all the reading, watching the videos, taking the, taking basically advantage of everything that was on the program and for like doing other programs, like for other like midterms and final tests that I found like on Google, like random stuff you could do for free. It's like a simulation of the test. So I was doing that. And then finally a week before I was supposed to go in, they wiped my profile, even though it was like 3 weeks late. So I ended up actually getting all the way up to so there was like 42 courses. I got up to like 35 before they wiped it. So I was now ahead of the class. So anyways, so I went into the second class and the people in there were just as cool as the first one. But by that point, 2 of the I think either 2 or 3 of the teachers at the school had quit because no one was listening to them when they kept saying like the equipment is not usable. We don't even use this shit anymore, which was like a lot of what I was told. And they didn't like care because they didn't want to spend any money. So they even said, like, I remember like we all like got around the gurney when the nurse was in there and he was like laughing, like telling us we don't even use these gurneys on ambulances anymore. Like this, he was like, this is some shit from the 80s or something like that. So anyways, I still got a lot of good training. It's just, but the training was like backwards. So right when I went into the second one, I was actually prepared this time and knew exactly what to do and how to get through all, like how to get through everything. And then when it was time to do the quizzes after a month and a half, and then it was like 3 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, I actually passed all of them by like 90%, like 92%. I was using Quizlet for like a lot of that shit back then. So anyways, I ended up passing and I was one of the top people in the class for the EMT program. So, and it actually was going fairly quickly this time, but then I got discouraged again because there was a really cool fire medic in there who I actually was able to like connect to because he was like teaching us, but he wasn't, you could tell he wasn't like taking it too seriously. He was saying like, you know, that was like his attitude, but I was actually learning a lot from him. Like I remember he said like when we had to go over the heart, they had one of those slide things that like was attached to the ceiling, you know, that would project on the wall, and he took his laser pointer. And then like the first day he went in to teach us, he was like, all right, everybody, I'm a fire medic and I work at this fire station. I came here, you know, because I only work 2 days a week. He said some shit like that. And he was like, I want to fucking make some extra money. And then he took the laser pointer and he was like, all right, so, and then he was like circling it. He was like, okay, so this fucking shit here is the vena cava. So I was like, okay. But then I think it was like so it was a month in, like after we had done midterms, we only had 2 more quizzes left. And then after that next quiz, he ended up just quitting. And this was like the 4th fucking teacher that quit on us. And basically we had a couple of classes canceled, even though I had already paid for all the classes. And then it was one of those things where they told me, well, it's not our fault that like we don't have someone for you. So you have to take a Zoom and watch the, oh yeah, that was another thing. You have to get on Zoom and you have to join the class, even though they were going over shit we didn't even go over or we had 2 months prior. It was a Zoom from California. And they said when it was done, when we went into the class, the following Tuesday, when I remember one of the guys like asked, does this account for our accreditation? And the woman said, no, it doesn't. That's just for you to gain extra knowledge. Like everything was a fucking excuse with this school. Like super fucking inappropriate, super like mad unprofessional. So they said, well, we never said that, like, if you attend the Zoom classes from California or from Tucson or wherever the fuck they said, if you attend those, no, they don't count for the credits in this class. No, it doesn't count. And then I remember just everybody being, like, pissed off. Like, I would say half the people in both classes I was in, like, were just pissed off and, like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like one of the girls said after the guy quit, even though she already took midterms, she said, you know what, my dad said I can't, like, because she was like 17. She was like, yeah, my dad said I can't do this anymore. He's having me go to the community college. She said, oh, I explained it to him, and he said that, no, your school's a joke. You're not learning anything there. Which she was right. Her dad was right. So anyways, what happened after that is we ended up taking finals, and I crammed and studied my ass off for it. I passed the midterms. Then when I got all the way to the point where the class, it was like, I would say like 50% of the class was there because so many people had like left and like quit. I think it was like 75% of the class. I think the previous class was the one where people were just dropping like flies left and right, like every week I went in. But anyway, so we ended up doing finals. And the teacher who ended up being like a tech or something like that, I forgot his name, but he was a fireman for like 20 years, and he was like fantastic. He was one of the guys that was from the original training that actually never quit. And so even though he would tell us like, oh no, this school's like really bad. Like you guys really should just like go somewhere else. I got told that so many times. Anyways, so we end up coming in for finals. And so when I came in for finals, we all, did it together in this classroom that was not the original classroom we had been using, because they used that when they had 3 proctors come in, which I don't understand how it's not a part of the NREMT if you have legitimate fucking proctors. Like, it just didn't make any sense. So we went through the Pearson program, and they said, okay, finals was like 250 questions, and you have like an hour to do it. Or it was an hour and a half. It was like some shit like that. I ended up getting done with it, and I got a 94% on it because I had just been, I used Quizlet, but I actually knew a lot of the answers because I'd been fucking cramming and studying every single fucking day for like 6 fucking months. And so finally did it. And then when I passed, I had to wait in line, and then I ended up doing the 7-station proctors test with 3 proctors, and I did that. I passed all of those with flying colors. I did exactly what they wanted me to do. I got like a fucking A+. Then when all that was done, I had to go into a private room with my instructor, who was one of the proctors, and he said, okay, you need to now do I'm going to give you a scenario. You're going to do a full trauma and a full medical assessment. And so I did that, and I got like a C because I kept, for some reason, the trauma one, I was able to get through that like really quick. But the medical, like a basic medical one, I kept screwing up the middle part of it. But he said, oh no, you still passed it. He was like, even though you made mistakes here, here, and here, like you still got it. And so I was like, okay, that's great. And then so what happened is that the woman, the receptionist, so she gave me this fucking this green ugly ass t-shirt and said, you have to wear this when we send you out to do your 36 hours. So, and they were all broken up by 12s because that was the only option they had for where they sent me, because I told her I can only do like Sundays and Mondays. It was like because of my work schedule. I was like, dude, I can't take off work. Like, you have to give me one of these days. And it ended up just being Sundays. So I did 12s on Sundays. But one of those days, the whole fucking road was closed because a light pole had fallen into the road, and it was on US 60, and there was no other roads to take to get to the firehouse to do my internship. So I literally drove an hour and like 10 minutes. And then when I was about to get there, they were saying, take a detour, but there was no fucking detour. And I ended up just going to a Carl's Jr. pissed off, and I ate one of those nasty ass breakfast sandwiches. And then I got up and I just drove back, and I kept telling them over and over again, I can't get to the site. And then again, they tried to blame me for it. Like, fucking stupid. So anyways, I ended up doing the 36 hours, and it was 1 week, 2 week. One of them, the third week got canceled, but then they put me on the following Sunday. And so I ended up working at a firehouse where I seriously only went to 4 fucking calls the whole time I was there. 4. So every 12 hours was only 1 call. I mean, I had a great time with the guys there. They were really nice and cool. And like one of the guys bought me lunch. Like, they were really nice there. The last day I was there, it was not great because I worked with 2 women who did not, it was both EMT B and a paramedic. And both of them could not, from what I was told, they couldn't stand each other and they didn't want to be around each other. So I got literally 0 fucking training. Like, they both went into their rooms and they closed the door. And then I literally was just sitting in the main, like, the fires, what is it called? Like the fire station hangout area with the TV in the kitchen. I seriously sat there for like 6 fucking hours just by myself on my phone because they didn't want to acknowledge that I was there. It was super fucking inappropriate. Like, they should have had fucking write-ups for that shit. But whatever, dude. Anyways, so once all that was finished, I'm just going to wrap it up right now. Once all of that was done, I went and sent over to them saying my 36 hours is complete. Here's all the signatures. Here's the paramedics that signed off on my thing. I ended up scanning them and then sending them over. And then they said, well, and then it got all mixed up because around that time period of the last time I went to the firehouse, the woman who she was terrible at her fucking job. The receptionist that she ended up getting fired. She ended up calling out for like a week for whatever reason. Then they fired her, but they didn't have another receptionist to like replace her. And this was after the last week that I was there when I had finished everything. I got like A pluses on almost everything. And then I did my 36 hours. And then a receptionist from Tucson told me, all this, and this, like all the stuff you're trying to submit, we can't accept all this. I don't know why what's her name from your location. I don't know why she told you to do this, and this. Like that's not how we do things at the school. And basically it was an argument for weeks back and forth between me and this receptionist from Tucson, because it kept saying like, oh, well, what they told you in that class, that's not how we do things at the school. No, this isn't accredited. That whole thing with the proctor test, that's not accredited. And like we just kept going back and forth. And so I was telling my friends and family, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and sue this school because you guys wasted 7 months of my fucking time. And so what ended up happening is that this all ended with a loophole when I did my taxes. And the loophole ended up being that the loophole is that when I did my taxes, I was able to put down the school as a, saying that because I had entered this trade school program, they were able to give me partial government assistance on it, which I didn't know that existed. So I got 25% of all the money I spent back to me through the taxes. So I got a check from the government. So I said, okay, you know what, dude, let's just go ahead and let sleeping dogs lie. It's good enough. So I got 25% of all the money I spent back. So I said, dude, good enough. So ended up butchering them on Yelp and Google reviews, and I reported the company to the Better Business Bureau. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they're still open or not. It's been like a year, but I blasted them on everything I could find to basically get them in trouble with the government. To try to get them in trouble with the Department of Education. Like I did everything I could think of. I don't know if it's still there. Probably is, but yeah, that's my EMT story. So I never ended up going to the NREMT to actually get the nationwide cert because the receptionist from Tucson said that's the one that you actually need to do. And I kept telling her over and over again, I was never told that. It never got brought up in class. Everyone kept saying, I just needed the cert to work here in Arizona from your guys' school. And they said, they kept giving me excuses. And then I talked to her supervisor and they kept saying, you didn't do this, this, and this. Once you do these things, then you have to sign up to go to the NREMT and then you have to do your finals all over again. And I said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm suing this company. I'm suing the school. But then I ended up getting partially the money back. And that's what happened to SO Chris 199. So 7 months of my time, it's whatever. So anyways, that's what happens in life most of the time. If you bust your ass, it doesn't amount to anything. So that's just the truth. So yeah, no, in order for you to get ahead, like to get like a bachelor's and master's and get a doctorate and all that shit, like, dude, it's literally like a less than 1%. And you need a fucking rich family to basically pay your way to fucking get through it and to pay off the teachers and, whatever it is that rich people do to, you can say I worked for this and I did this and I did that. It's like, no, you didn't. No, because I did that. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And I even worked harder than everyone else in the class. In both classes, I worked my ass off and got nothing for it because I grew up fucking poor. I had to go through this program so I could try to pay it off as soon as possible because it was the cheapest option and I got fucked. So that's just life. That's normal. If you're rich, then you can do whatever you want. But if you grew up like me when you were fucking in a, under the poverty line, then that's just what it is. That's your life. So yeah, anyways, I'm not a liberal, but the eat the rich thing. I mean, and that guy with Luigi fucking assassinating that guy from United Healthcare. You know what? Maybe just more of them need to get fucking assassinated because, dude, it's literally life. That's just how things work. So, anyways, this is SO Chris 199, and Next week, next Friday, I'm going to be going over the story with you guys as to when I quit, put in my 2 weeks, what I talked about in the last video, and I went to a company where I ended up doing something in security I had never done before. And they seriously sent me to a domestic violence call twice as an unarmed security guard because they seriously did not have enough police officers to go to the call. And I'm not even fucking joking about that. So, all right. So I gave it to you raw, unfiltered. Fuck rich people.